Believe it or not, the Subaru Crosstrek has been with us since 2013. That's 11 years. And it's not 11 years because I'm bad at math. I know it's 2023. It's because this is the new 2024 Subaru Crosstrek. Now, this is certainly a popular car. It's one of Subaru's best-selling models, trading places with the Forester on any given month. So we want to see, how did they improve it? How did they make it different? How did they make it stand out in what has become an incredibly competitive class of vehicles? I mean, you've got a new HR-V, you have a hybrid Toyota Corolla Cross coming down the road, and then you've got great cars like the Kia Seltos or the Hyundai Kona. But before we talk about any of those, don't forget to subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel, where we publish multiple videos every week on the cars you want to see. We definitely want to hear from you. We want you to comment, subscribe, like. Do that. Let us know what you want to know about these cars, and I'll tell you what you should know about the 2024 Crosstrek. Subaru sells the 2024 Crosstrek in 4 trims. There's the base trim, creatively called Base, and then above that you have the Premium, the Sport, and the Limited. Now at the front, they've got a little bit of a new look, although it is still definitely a Subaru, and in fact definitely a Crosstrek. One of the things I really like, we have these nicely stylized headlights, but they kind of connect in with this bar that splits the larger frameless grille, and it has a little bit of a lift on either end, kind of a little bit of a smile to it. It looks like a happy car, and I like that. Another thing I like, because I own a Subaru, is that this is clearly a Subaru. I mean, this is a style that works for me, but I want to hear from you. Do you think overall the Subaru style is a hit or a miss? For instance, black plastic cladding around the wheel wells. I don't mind it. I see it as it's functional, it's utilitarian, and if you're into it, it's a little bit of flair, a little bit of style, but it's definitely Subaru. Another thing that I've noticed here, and this isn't necessarily typical of older Subarus, is that there's some real focus on aerodynamics. So we have some air inlets and outlets around the wheel wells. That helps take all that air that gets caught up in the wheel when you're moving down the highway. And instead of getting it all mixed up in there and really turbulent, it ushers it right out the back, makes things a lot smoother. And that's not just gonna help with your fuel economy, it'll also help with wind noise. And in a car as big as the Crosstrek, which is to say, very small, wind noise can be absolutely brutal. Okay, roof rails. When we talk about what makes a Subaru, I'd put roof rails pretty high up on the list. I mean, they're on the Forester, they're on the Outback, they're on the Crosstrek. They're not standard on the base trim, but there are mounting points, so you could add them later. But if you want them right out of the box, you have to get a Premium, a Sport, or a Limited trim. They have a little bit of a new design this year, but they definitely still have that classic Subaru look. Dimensionally, the 2024 Crosstrek is almost identical to the 2023 model. It does have identical approach and breakover angles. The departure angle is a little steeper than it was before, so that's a little bit of an improvement. We also have standard Yokohama Geolandar tires on the 2024 Crosstrek. Now, at the back, so we still have what is clearly a Subaru design. There's a little bit of creasing in the bodywork. I actually think it looks pretty sharp here though. I think overall this is a good looking vehicle. In a lot of respects, the new Crosstrek does seem to resemble the old Crosstrek. I mean, it's still Subaru's subcompact crossover riding on 17-inch alloys with 8.7 inches of ground clearance, but it is a new car. It has new sheet metal, it has a new chassis, it has new safety tech, it has new tech. There are even 3 new colors: Sunblaze, Offshore Blue, and Sapphire Blue. I think I got those right. Just like the exterior dimensions haven't changed much, the interior dimensions are pretty similar as well. So you have a little less cargo space than before, but not so much that you're really going to notice it on a day-to-day basis. And similarly, the rear seat legroom and headroom, none of that has changed much. The front seat feels pretty much like you're driving the same size Crosstrek that we've been driving for, again, 11 years. It's amazing how quickly time flies. It makes you feel old. It makes me feel old. So one thing in the interior design of the Crosstrek that is a huge change is its 11.6-inch touchscreen display. You're gonna find this same display, or very, very similar display, in the much more expensive Subaru Outback, and it's cool to see them building some cohesiveness in design between their entry-level model and what I would consider to be still the brand's iconic flagship, not a station wagon. It's basically a station wagon. So the touchscreen display it's an impressive thing to look at. Some people might find it a little frustrating to use because it does bury a few more features behind the touchscreen interface instead of having physical buttons and knobs. That said, Subaru does a nice job of including physical buttons, and we have a volume knob and a tuning knob for things that we're going to use regularly. So the HVAC buttons, those are physical. Again, the volume tuning knob, those are obviously physical. And then we've got some icons that are static, so they'll always be in the same place and they'll always show on the screen. So for instance, we have the auto stop-start feature. Doesn't move. It stays there no matter what I do with the screen. And if that's something that every time you get in your Crosstrek you turn that off or you turn that on, well, then you're going to appreciate that it doesn't go away. You're not going to have to hunt for it. Some other cool tech features that we get with this new updated screen are wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. That's if you get the premium trim or above. If you go with the sport trim, you get cool yellow inserts on the seats and some yellow contrast stitching, whereas our premium trim is really just shades of black and gray. It's not the best looking interior, but it does feel functional. It feels like, frankly, it'd be pretty easy to clean all of this dust that we've gotten into the car off, at the end of the day. So there's some Subaru utilitarianism there. Another bit of Subaru utilitarianism is that they've told us that they've engineered this center console to be large enough to fit two 32-ounce Nalgene water bottles. And if you're a camper or a hiker like I am, you know that Nalgene water bottles don't fit anywhere in a car. So the fact that Subaru has made a clear, decision to say, no, we're gonna give our customers a place to put those water bottles, it's an example of the brand knowing its customer, and that's something that I always appreciate. And I guess the last thing I would say about the Crosstrek's design is that rather than taking the old model and throwing it out and starting fresh and trying to do a brand new best Crosstrek ever, they've taken more of a Kaizen, Japanese Kaizen approach. And it makes sense for a Japanese company. It's the idea that they're always going to make incremental improvements across the product's lifespan. So it's the little things, like they have made the HVAC vents more aerodynamic to quiet the climate control down, and the rear windshield wiper covers more area now in 2024. It's those little details, those little improvements that take a car from being a really good car and give it a chance to be a really great car. As it was last year, the sport trim and the limited trim, they come with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, whereas the premium trim that we're driving and the base trim, they're more value focused and they come with a smaller, less powerful 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. So the bigger engine makes 182 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque, whereas the smaller engine, this 2-liter, it makes 152 horsepower and 145 pound-feet of torque. And I would say that difference is just enough to make the 2-liter feel a little underwhelming. Now, Subaru says that they have retuned the engine for 2024 to make the 2-liter feel a little peppier. And I'm not sure I noticed that. Maybe I would if I was driving them back to back, but it's been a while since I drove that smaller 2-liter. So all I can say is that this isn't fast, but it's also not lethargic. One thing that might upset you, particularly if you're one of our enthusiastic fans, is that there's no more manual transmission option in the base Crosstrek. That means that all these Crosstreks have a continuously variable transmission. Now there's some good news to this, and it's largely because Subaru has been using CVTs for so long, they've really worked them out. I mean, this is not a bad transmission. It runs up the rev range nicely, and then it has paddle shifters on the premium sport and limited trims that they have 8 simulated gears, and it's pretty quick. You know, it feels maybe not quite like you're driving an automatic, but it doesn't feel like you're driving a really rubber bandy CVT. So yes, it's easy to look at the CVT only stat line on the press release and say, boo. But I don't think it's that big a deal, particularly because nobody's buying a Crosstrek to take out to Willow Springs anyways. Unless you are. If you are, let us know in the comments. I want to hear about that. So another performance-related detail that's easy to overlook, but is going to have a huge impact in your day-to-day life, particularly if you live in an urban area like I do. Subaru says that the powertrain is 20% less vibration-y. There's 20% less vibration in the powertrain than there was previously. That doesn't sound like it's that big a deal, but if you drove a older Subaru and you had the stop-start system on, every time, sorry, we've got a car stopping in front of us, every time it stopped and every time it started, the whole car would shake like a, Elliot, what do we call this?
Maraca.
Like a maraca. It would shake like a maraca. And you still get a little more rattle than you would in an inline 4-cylinder engine just based on the layout of the horizontally opposed 4 cylinders that Subaru uses, but it is not nearly as jarring as it was before. And I'm much more inclined to keep the auto stop start system on to save a little bit of that fuel, save a little bit of the environment, you know, a very little bit of fuel. Because it doesn't bug me like it used to. The steering in this car it's light, it's surprisingly light. It's a little vaguer than I would have expected, particularly for a car this size, but it's pretty quick. It's not a bad steering system. Subaru's upgraded to a dual pinion steering rack. And then the suspension, you know, considering Subarus aren't really known for cornering, it doesn't lean quite as much. Now, part of that feeling could be that they've adjusted the seats in the 2024 Crosstrek. So now they're bolted to the chassis instead of kind of sitting above the chassis. And they say that really helps reduce head toss, but I'm wondering if it also impacts kind of that sensation of body roll and reduces that sensation. Either way, I'm pretty happy with how this car handles. It's not fast, but you know, it's also not a slow, roly-poly thing. X mode is another Subaru feature that's worth mentioning, but a lot of people don't really understand what it's doing, what it means, how it works. So in the simplest terms, and Subaru engineers might say, it's not simple, but in the simplest terms, it brakes the wheel that doesn't have traction so they can send more power to the wheels that do have traction. Now, on the base trim and the premium trim, that's the one we're driving, the premium, it's a more simplistic version of X mode. It has a dirt and snow function to it. If you get the sport or the limited trims, you have a more advanced version of X mode that has a deep snow and a mud capability. So in addition to X mode, which is, you know, a great feature that you're going to use sometimes, you have symmetrical all-wheel drive that is engaged all the time. And that's because it's a Subaru, and Subaru's they know that their bread and butter is based on this idea of all-wheel drive capability. You tack on X mode, you tack on the 8.7 inches of ground clearance, and suddenly you have a car that really can do some things that other subcompact crossovers just can't do. So I'm not saying that this is an off-roader. And in fact, nobody at Subaru HQ is likely to call this an off-roader. What it is a car that can go off-road when it needs to. You know, it might not go down the trail, but it'll get you to the trailhead. And you're not going to drive it up, you know, the ski mountain, but it's not going to have any problem getting to the ski mountain. Fuel economy is pretty good, although it's not eye-popping because it's not a hybrid or a PHEV. The combined figure comes out at 29 mpg. It's a little higher on the highway, a little lower in the city, but that 29 is the same whether you get the 2-liter or the 2.5-liter. So considering this car comes standard with all-wheel drive, it has that ride height, it doesn't have a hybrid engine, I would say that 29 mpg is pretty good. And what's even better is that this car has a 16.6 gallon fuel tank, which means that if you do just take it out on the highway for a jaunt, You can go 500, maybe 550 miles before you have to refuel. That's awesome. The last bit of technology that we'll talk about is Subaru's safety technology. Now, it's called EyeSight. It's been around for a while, but the Crosstrek gets a little bumpy, a little more advanced EyeSight system. It's the latest feature. It has a more wide-angle camera up front, so it is not just detecting what's directly in front of you. It does a better job of detecting kind of like what's over there and what's over there. And then there is a automatic emergency steering assist, something like that. We'll put the label right here. Can we just write it out right there? This is a system that will help you avoid the car that's suddenly stopped in front of you. Now, it's not the car that is in the lane stopped in front of you, because the car, it won't force your Crosstrek out of its lane. But like if you've got that, guy who's double parked in front of Dunkin' Donuts and you notice him at the last minute, it'll steer your car out of the way so you don't, take out his driver or passenger side wing mirror. Pretty nice feature. For instance, we have a car that's literally parked in the road right now. Amazing. How often is it that you are driving a car on camera and you get to demonstrate a safety feature in real time? It's all coming up roses today. The 2024 Subaru Crosstrek has a starting MSRP of only $24,995 plus the $1,225 destination fee. Now, if you get a premium or a sport or a limited, those prices do go up incrementally, but ultimately I think this is a pretty good value, especially when you consider that it comes standard with all-wheel drive. It's an outdoorsy subcompact crossover designed for outdoorsy people. So if that describes you, well then I would recommend taking one out for a test drive. See if you like it. See if you want the 2-liter 4-cylinder that you can get in the base and the premium trims. Those are going to be out this spring. Or maybe you would prefer the 2.5-liter engine, the slightly more powerful sport or limited trims. Let us know in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.